In February 2022, 3 weeks before Russian forces crossed into Ukraine, U.S.-European Command's classified operations and maintenance budget increased by $847 million in a supplemental authorization. No public explanation was provided. No forces had deployed. No strikes had been launched. By the time the invasion began, that money had already been spent. This was not preparation for war. It was activation of something already built. A distributed operational state that comes online before conflict is declared, before diplomacy fails, before the public knows a crisis is escalating. The Pentagon does not go to war. It changes modes, and most of that transition is invisible. Defense budgets follow predictable patterns. Procurement rises when platforms are in production. RDT&E peaks during development. Operations and maintenance tracks with force structure and deployment tempo. But certain classified line items don't follow these rules. They spike in advance of conflict. Then they normalize. Then they spike again, before the next crisis. The pattern is consistent enough to be structural, irregular enough to evade public scrutiny. Look at fiscal year 2022. Months before Ukraine, classified O&M accounts across combatant commands increased significantly in supplemental requests. Not RDT&E, not procurement, operations and maintenance. That's sustainment funding. It pays for systems that already exist to do more than they do in peacetime. The same pattern appeared in late 2023 as Middle East tensions escalated. Classified special activities funding under Central Command's O&M budget increased ahead of public force deployments. U.S. forces were not yet striking Houthi positions in Yemen, but something had already been turned on. This is not reactive spending, it's anticipatory. It funds an operational posture that exists between peace and war, a state that has no unclassified name, but leaves a clear budgetary signature. The U.S. military does not mobilize the way it did in the 20th century. There are no mass troop movements, no fleets departing port and formation, no public declarations of readiness conditions. Instead, certain systems enter what Pentagon doctrine obliquely refers to as persistent operational readiness. Not deployment, not alert status, readiness. This term appears in classified annexes to joint doctrine publications, in budget justification documents with redacted program names, and in congressional testimony discussing special access programs. It describes a condition where systems remain in place but transition from monitoring to active engagement. What does that mean in practice? Satellites change their tasking priorities. Instead of routine intelligence collection, they begin persistent coverage of specific regions. Not a single satellite repositioning, that would be visible, but a retasking of constellation priorities. More revisits, tighter dwell time, different sensors activated. Cyber units shift from passive monitoring to active network persistence. Not attacks, those would be acts of war, but deeper presence in adversary networks, mapping infrastructure, identifying vulnerabilities, positioning for effects that may or may not be used. ISR platforms alter their operational tempo. RC-135s, RQ-4s, P-8s, acknowledged platforms flying unacknowledged missions. Flight hours increase, crew rotations accelerate, but no additional aircraft deploy. The same assets are simply used differently. Logistics networks begin pre-positioning without corresponding force movements. Ammunition stocks shift. Fuel reserves redistribute. Maintenance crews forward deploy to bases that are not yet active operational hubs. These are small movements, individually unremarkable, collectively indicative. What makes this significant is the coordination. These shifts happen simultaneously across domains. That does not occur without a directive, and that directive is not public. Follow the money backward. Operations and maintenance budgets for classified programs are not supposed to fluctuate dramatically year to year. O&M is sustainment. It's steady, predictable. You maintain systems at the rate required to keep them operational. But in fiscal years preceding major conflicts or near-peer confrontations, classified O&M spending increases disproportionately, not just for one service, across the joint force. In the Air Force, line items like selected activities under O&M will see 15 to 20% increases in supplemental requests during years where no new platforms have been fielded. That's not maintenance, that's activation. In the Navy, special programs O&M funding will spike in the Pacific Fleet budget ahead of tensions in the Taiwan Strait or South China Sea. These are not ship movements. Ships have their own O&M lines. This funds something else. The Army's classified O&M contains entries for planning and decision aids and special operations support. These budget lines grow during pre-conflict periods, then contract once kinetic operations begin or tensions subside. What are they funding? Not new capabilities, that's RDT&E. Not new equipment, that's procurement. They're funding the operational use of existing classified systems at a higher tempo than peacetime requires. This is the budgetary signature of a mode shift. Physical infrastructure behaves the same way. Certain classified facilities enter sustained high-tempo operations before conflicts become public. Not mobilization. There are no sirens, no alerts, no press releases, just a change in operational rhythm. Take secure communications nodes. The Pentagon operates a global network of hardened, redundant, high-capacity communications facilities. Most of the time, they operate at baseline. But monitoring of electromagnetic signatures, personnel access patterns, and even commercial satellite imagery of parking lots at these facilities shows cyclical increases in activity that precede major strategic events. This occurred before the 2003 Iraq invasion. It occurred before the 2011 Libya intervention. It occurred before escalation in Syria. And it occurred in late 2021 before Ukraine. The same pattern appears at test ranges. White Sands Missile Range, Point Mugu, Nellis, and other restricted facilities show upticks in restricted airspace use and electromagnetic activity during these windows. Not tests. Those are scheduled and often publicly disclosed in NOTAMs. This is operational validation of systems that are about to be used. Contractor facilities exhibit the same behavior. Northrop Grumman's Melbourne, Florida facility, known for classified space payloads, shows increased activity ahead of certain satellite launches. Lockheed's Fort Worth and Palmdale facilities increase their secure area access logs. These are not production surges. They're pre-deployment preparations. The infrastructure is not hiding, it's activating, and the activation pattern is consistent. Why this state must remain unacknowledged. If adversaries knew the United States had entered this operational mode, they would know several things immediately. First, they would know that U.S. intelligence believes conflict is likely. That assessment itself is strategic information. It reveals American intent, capability confidence, or intelligence assessments about adversary behavior. Second, they would know which capabilities are being activated. That tells them what the U.S. believes matters most in the coming conflict. It exposes operational priorities and, by inference, perceived vulnerabilities. Third, they would know when to act. If an adversary can detect the transition to this state, they can time their own escalation to occur either before the U.S. reaches full readiness or after, when systems are active but political will may still be forming. This is why the state cannot have a public name, why it cannot be officially acknowledged, why its activation is funded through classified O&M lines that appear as minor fluctuations in opaque budget categories. The existence of the state is itself a targetable vulnerability. U.S. joint doctrine does not explicitly describe this state, but it creates space for it. Joint Publication 3.0, Joint Operations, discusses competition below armed conflict and campaigning in contact. These are deliberate phrases. They describe continuous operations that are neither peace nor war. Joint Publication 3-12, Cyberspace Operations, discusses persistent engagement. That term is doing work. Persistence implies continuity of presence. Engagement implies action, not observation. Joint Publication 3-14, Space Operations, refers to space superiority as a condition that must be established before conflict. Not during, before. That requires systems to be postured in advance. These doctrinal concepts are not theoretical. They describe operational states the U.S. military already employs. The doctrine is written around the capabilities, not the other way around. When you cross-reference doctrinal language with budget patterns, facility behavior, and historical precedent, the picture clarifies. The U.S. military operates in at least 3 states: peacetime baseline, pre-conflict activation, and wartime operations. The middle state is the one that's never discussed. Most defense analysis focuses on hardware: the next fighter, the next submarine, the next hypersonic missile. Those systems matter, but they are not decisive. What decides modern conflict is who achieves information dominance first, who sees the battlefield completely, who processes targeting data faster, who can strike before the adversary's kill chain completes. That advantage is not built during war. It's built in peacetime and activated before war begins. The pre-conflict state is when ISR constellations are retasked for maximum coverage, when cyber units position themselves in adversary networks, when autonomous decision aids are brought fully online, when logistics networks ensure shooters will have what they need before they know they need it. By the time conflict becomes public, the critical advantage has already been established or lost. This is why the classified budget emphasizes architecture over platforms. Why O&M funding for special programs rivals RDT&E spending for acknowledged systems. Why the Pentagon is willing to accept reduced force structure in exchange for capabilities that activate before shots are fired. The war starts before the war starts. You cannot confirm this system exists. There is no program name, no leaked document, no official acknowledgement. But the pattern is undeniable. Budget anomalies precede conflicts with consistent timing. Infrastructure activity increases in advance of strategic events. Doctrine creates conceptual space for operations that are neither peace nor war. And the Pentagon's own budget priorities reveal sustained investment in classified O&M at levels inconsistent with peacetime maintenance. This is not speculation. It's inference from observable behavior. The United States does not maintain a military that reacts to war. It maintains a military that transitions into war through deliberate, classified, pre-conflict activation. That transition is the most important operational capability the Pentagon possesses, and it is almost entirely invisible. The most powerful weapons system the United States operates is not a platform, it's a state. An operational condition that comes online before diplomacy fails, before adversaries escalate, before the public knows conflict is likely. It's funded under classified operations and maintenance. It's enabled by systems built in the classified RDT&E budget we've analyzed before, and it's sustained by an infrastructure that knows how to activate without announcing itself. Adversaries know this system exists because they've seen its effects. They've watched U.S. forces anticipate their moves. They've experienced information dominance they cannot explain. They've lost before firing a shot. But they cannot see when it activates. They cannot identify what specifically has changed. They cannot time their actions to exploit the gap. That uncertainty is the weapon. This is not the Pentagon hiding capabilities. This is the Pentagon operationalizing advantage at a level most analysis never examines. The invisible war network is not coming. It's already here. It's been here for decades. You just have to know how to see it.